Hello, what's up, everybody? I still have COVID, probably. I don't know. I'm waiting on test results that my job made me go get because they don't believe my literal stack of positive COVID tests. Um, anyway, yeah, I guess me not being able to taste food is just fine and normal. Um, And also, apparently, even though I've been calling out every day, I'm going to get written up for not calling out, even though I have been calling out. So I'm having a great fucking week. I'm having a great week. I hope y'all have had a great week. It's Friday, so probably for a lot of you, your week is over. Um, anyway, let's play this game. Uh, so let's check our stats again. We are Mr. Edward Smith, Lieutenant, 3-year seniority, age 29. Here's our stats. We're getting some chances to prove ourselves here. So here we go. Sweat pours down your face as you navigate up close to the starboard side of the gulless ship. To your profound relief, no one aboard notices a thing. Pistols cocked, you order in a whisper. You look up above you at the chains that snake up the ship's side, shining silver and then disappearing into darkness. It's time. Do you lead, or do you order Stewart to lead so you can supervise the men as they board? I'm the officer in command, and I won't ask anyone to do what I will not do myself, or need to make sure that my men undertake their duties correctly at order. I think I'm going to lead. Well said. Follow me, you whisper as loudly as you dare. Spring to your feet, catch hold of the chains. Behind you, you hear the men following as quietly and quickly as they manage. You make to the top of the heavy chains, pull yourself over to the side onto the deck, and come face to face with a wide-eyed, white-faced boy. He is too startled and frightened to shout now, but he will recover in no more than an instant, and most of your men are still ascending the chains behind you. What do you do? I don't want to kill him if he's just a kid. That's pretty mean. I just knock him out. He falls backward, making no more noise than a soft thump when he hits the deck, mouth open as if in surprise and blood running down his face. Your men pull themselves over the ship's side as quietly as possible. You wait until a good number are beside you, then take a deep breath. For Albion, you shout, and plunge in the confused mass of gulls, unprepared by your surprise attack. You cut to the left and the right with your sword, shouting as loudly as you can. At first the gulls scatter before you, but then they begin to regroup. One rushes you from the left, and you turn and plunge your sword into his chest. He falls, but there is another diving in from the right, closing his chest as you struggle to extricate your blade from his dead shipmate. What do you do? Use all my strength to wrench the sword free, turn and fight. Abandon my sword, turn to fight with my pistol. There isn't enough time to turn, I dodge to the left. Pistol? Pistol. You let go of the hilt and spin around, leveling your pistol as your new opponent swings his sword. Steel whistles past your ear. You fire at point-blank range. The Gaul falls to the deck, a smoking hole in the center of his chest. In a smooth motion, you pick up the fallen Gaul's sword and pistol to replace your own. You turn your attention back to the task at hand, fighting your way through the mass of bodies to the cable. You have almost reached your goal when you find your way blocked by two massive angry gulls standing shoulder to shoulder. You aim your pistol, and just then, out of the corner of your eye, see Mason fighting a desperate duel on the other side of the deck. If Mason falls, his task will go uncompleted. On the other hand, if you spend your bullet to save his life, you will be out of ammunition, and then you will have to fight both these gulls with just your sword. If they cut you down, your task will go uncompleted. What do you do? I'm gonna help him. Mason's attacker drops like a stone. Mason looks over wide-eyed, then gives you an awkward nod of thanks and scrambles to his task. You, meanwhile, turn back to see two large gulls with drawn swords charging at you. You hail an incoherent challenge and rush to meet them. Steel clangs against steel. Pain scores across your left leg as one of the gulls lands a blow. You are not fighting by any honorable rules now, but desperately for your life, using elbows and knees as well as the blade of your sword. You manage to elbow one gull in the throat. He falls back, choking curses. That gives you the opportunity you need to wound the other slightly and run before he recovers. At last, you pummel your way through the mass of bodies to the anchor cable and hack through it with your sword. The gulless ship is drifting freely now. You look up and pick out Mason's dark figure, very high up in the rigging, as you watch the topsail flutters free. You turn back to fight. In no time at all, gulls are surrendering all over the deck. You take prisoner those who still live, get the prize underway, and take her safely back to Courageous. Bryce's prize beats you there by no more than a few minutes. You and he meet on deck. He looks as flushed and giddy as you feel. You reach over to shake his hand. He squeezes yours warmly. "Brilliant," the captain says in approval. "Very nicely done indeed, the two of you." He orders you and Bryce to take command of your prizes and sail them to Albion, adding with a smile that he would be much surprised if you did not each receive a promotion to commander. I think that went very well. Indeed, the Admiralty promotes you to the rank of commander. It is a proud moment indeed when you first walk down the street in Chesterport with an epaulet pinned to your left shoulder. You are now eligible to command a sloop of your own and to receive courtesy title of captain. Well done, Captain Smith. You experience the greatest thrill of your life when you step onto the deck of your first command, HM Sloop Hotspur. You're very pleased indeed by what you observe there. She is a gleaming, almost new sloop that reportedly handles like a charm, crewed by good men, obviously accustomed to working well together. A plum command, particularly for a new commander such as yourself. That night you dream of all the fine things you will do now that you have a sloop of your own. In the morning you wake to a general hullabaloo on the dock and in the streets of Chesterport. Peace has been declared between Albion and Gaul. Well, the details are not finalized, but documents have been signed and hostilities suspended. Before you know it, you find yourself once again in front of the captain, who commands the port, but this time to hear the unwelcome news that Hotspur is to be paid off, that is, decommissioned. The Admiralty won't have need of such a large fleet in peacetime. Your career has, for the moment at least, vanished in a puff of smoke and diplomats. Wow, that sucks. We just got a promotion and then it was gone. Might there be any chance of another command becoming available, sir? You asked deferentially. The captain grimaces. "I wish I could say, Mr. Smith. There will be ships needing captains, of course, but there will also be a great many post-captains and commanders seeking positions. A bright youngster like yourself has a tolerable chance, but it may be some time." "Oh, but it's not so bad. You're entitled to half pay, and of course you have your prize money. You should enjoy your leave. You will receive a letter when a command becomes available." How are you feeling? Pleased? It's nice to have a holiday. Resigned? Or nervous? I'm just going to say pleased. I mean, I think we deserve a vacation. A perfectly understandable reaction. One day, some weeks later, on your way back from drawing your half pay, you run into your old friend Bryce. "Smith, what good luck to meet up with you. You must come and dine with me tonight. I want to introduce you to my wife." You enjoy the meal very much. Mrs. Bryce is a charming hostess, gracious and sweet and well-mannered, and Bryce is obviously devoted to her. After dinner, you and Bryce sit drinking rum and storytelling long into the night. Suddenly, Bryce says, "So what about you, Smith? High time you got married, isn't it?" Looks at you shrewdly and laughs. "You're about to tell me you've been too busy to think of it? Well, you'll have plenty of leisure while you're on half pay. You should think about it now." You consider the idea. What do you conclude? Ooh. We can try to get a wife because we love wives. We can try to get a wife to better our career. We can not get married, or we can not get a wife because gay. I think we should be gay. Oh, I see. Well, that's not unheard of for Royal Naval officers, although it's not the sort of thing you can talk about in polite society. But separate from any other arrangements, you might want to make your own personal fulfillment. There is the question of the advantage a good marriage could give you as you pursue your career. You wouldn't be the only naval officer to have a wife back home and other arrangements somewhere else. I mean, it's not as though you have seen your wife very often. What are you going to tell Bryce? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no to marriage. Well, alright, Bryce says. If that's the way you want it, have another glass. To his credit, Bryce doesn't bring up the topic again. He does, however, convince you to go with him and Mrs. Bryce to the assembly rooms one evening. Truth to tell, you're not hard to convince. Even if you're not in search of a wife, an assembly is quite a sight to see. The assembly rooms are crowded with young people dancing and flirting. In rooms off to the side, those disinclined to dance or flirt are playing at cards. You walk around the ballroom, getting your bearings, enjoying the pomp and circumstance and splendor. Suddenly, a voice you know cuts through the chatter around you. "Mr. Smith." You turn astonished. It is Lieutenant Villeneuve. He is not wearing the uniform of the Gaulish Navy, but is unmistakably the same man whom you met aboard the Gaulish prize some time ago. The years have since treated him well. His skin is more weather-beaten, perhaps, and a scar seams his left cheek, but he looks to be otherwise in good health and good spirits, and not hurting for money either. He is dressed in a very fine linen shirt and a coat with gleaming gold buttons, and he carries a pair of elegant gloves such as the gentleman wears when dancing. He has clearly come to this assembly intending to dance. It is a small shock to you to realize that a Gaulish officer is here as someone's invited guest. How do you respond? What a surprise. It is a surprise to see you as well. His Albanish comes more easily than it did when you first met, though it is still heavily accented. Though I do acknowledge the surprise must be much greater on your side, to encounter me upon the soil of Albion, no? He smiles disarmingly. I have cousins who reside not far from here. Many Gaulish families can say the same. Marriages in between Gaul and Albion are not uncommon, after all, during the years of peace. And the years of peace have returned. He gestures around the pleasant room. So a man once again has freedom to visit his relations. It is a very fine thing, peace. It permits, he inclines his head at you, civilized gentlemen to interact in a civilized manner. This is as frank an overture of friendship as you have ever seen. What do? Respond in kind? Proceed warily? Pretend to respond in kind? Put him in his place. No, I think he's cool. So it does, you say. You raise your wine glass. To civilization. To civilization, Villeneuve agrees, and raises his back. More quietly, he says, You treated me with great respect when I was your prisoner. I've never forgotten that. It was not always so. I watched many Albionist officers mistreat those they captured, and so the honorable ones shone all the brighter. Before you can respond, a young, fair-haired Albionish man emerges from the crowd and touches Villeneuve's sleeve. He begins, Clarence wondered if you wished to join us at and then notices you. Oh, apologies. This is my cousin, Mr. Christy Pellier, Villeneuve says to you. Cousin, may I present Mr. Smith? So you and Clarence are in search of whist players. Villeneuve raises an eyebrow at you. Perhaps you would care to play, sir? Yeah, sure. You retreat to the card room with Villeneuve and his cousin, where you introduced to a thin, middle-aged Albanish man identified as Clarence Gilchrist. Gilchrist and Christy Pellier couldn't care less about getting to know you. They just want to play whist. Before you sit down at a polished oak table, you draw lots to pick partners, and you and Gilchrist team up against Villeneuve and Christy Pellier. You look at Villeneuve's face. You can't tell what he's thinking. You think of the deck of the Gaulish prize ship, ocean heaving all around you, shots and shouts echoing in your ears. The card room is warm and dimly lit, and somewhat stuffy with the smoke of the other card players' pipes and cigars. This is bizarre. Whist is a hard game to cheat at, but you can still manage to cheat if you catch glimpses of other players' cards if you want to. Do you want to cheat? No, I'm not going to cheat. Of course, I apologize for doubting your honor. Oops. You play whist for the rest of the evening and greatly enjoy yourself. Gilchrist and Christy Pellier devote most of their attention to the cards, but Villeneuve marks conversation here and there. You respond as best you can. It's awkward at first, but grows easier as the evening progresses, and you find yourself thinking it's quite a lot like playing cards with your shipmates. Villeneuve's style of play tells you something about him, too. He is aggressive and fearless when engrossed in the game, quite different from his carefully polished manners the rest of the time. You can respect that. It's a shame this man was born Gaulish, for he would have been an asset to an Albionist ship. Your native intelligence makes you an excellent whist player, and you and Gilchrist soundly trounce Villeneuve and Christy Pellier. The latter seems irritated, but Villeneuve only flings down his cards with a good-natured grimace and pays you your winnings. Well thought, he says to you and the other two. No, I have no wish for more time spent at this game. A last drink instead, before the night is over. Very good. A toast, gentlemen, to whist and civilization. And now you must see about getting yourself home. It is very late indeed. Bryce poked his head into the card room some time earlier, telling you that he and Miss Bryce wished to return home, and you said not to worry, you would find your own way back. Now you need to do that. You stand outside, breathing in the night air. Your head is fuzzy from the stuffiness of the card room, or did you have too much to drink? Behind you, you hear Villeneuve's distinctive voice. No, not to worry. It is more important that the carriage be put to the young lady's use. I can manage very well for myself. You turn, curious. It seems Miss Gilchrist engaged my cousin and Mr. Gilchrist to provide transportation for a youngster who is feeling ill. Villeneuve explains, It is no matter for me to walk. The night is a very fine one. It turns the two of you are headed in the same direction. Do you walk with him? Yeah. You head off together into the dark and quiet night. Villeneuve is making some inconsequential observation about whist games when you think you hear a rustle in the bushes that line the left side of the path. What do you do? Draw attention to the sound. You reach for Villeneuve's sleeve and feel rather than see the rush of movement behind you as 4 men spring out of the bushes. A gang of footpads preying on unwary or drunken travelers such as yourself. You have to admit they set up a very effective ambush. They are armed with knives. You fumble to draw your sword. Villeneuve draws his sword too. The footpads have surrounded the two of you. You fight back to back against all 4 of them. Even drunk, you manage to hold your own. These men are not trained after all, and armed only with knives, and your reflexes know exactly what to do. So do Villeneuve's, it would seem. You slash at the nearest footpad, and he hastily stumbles backward. The one beside him lunges in under your guard, knife stabbing for your throat. What do you do? Parry his little knife with my sword, sidestep, plunge the blade into his chest as he closes. Parry him, I guess. You flick your wrist. With the flick of your wrist, you knock the knife from his hand, his eyes widen, and he lurches backward off balance, and then steadies himself and takes off into the night. With no footpads left to menace you, you swing around to see how Villeneuve fares. Not very well, it seems. He lunges towards one footpad. This man fights the way he plays whist, fearless and aggressive, but that puts his unprotected back to the other. who raises his knife with an evil grin. Help him. Of course you do. How can an Albanish gentleman do otherwise? You strike out at the footpad and score a cut along his arm. He howls in pain and drops the knife. Not bothering with an attempt to retrieve it, clutches his bleeding arm, he stumbles away from you and takes off into the night. His companion follows suit. The footpads have been counting on an easy robbery, and you and Villeneuve together are too much trouble to make the fight worth their while. Villeneuve draws a deep, slow breath and sheaths his sword. He turns, meeting your eyes. Thank you. You have it off. My pleasure, sir. Villeneuve holds out his hand and you shake it, and then he chuckles, though it sounds a little strained. It is good to be alive, is it not? He says in explanation. What now? It's good to be alive. Do we want to get a drink? Do we want to get a drink because we're shaking? Or do we want to go to bed? I'm going to say we're a little shaky now, and we're going to drink again. I think being alive deserves a drink in celebration, you say to Villeneuve, and he grins. As you say, my friend. The two of you wind up in a nondescript tavern, drinking some forgettable ale and telling stories of the great battles and duels you have fought. If your stories are somewhat embellished in the telling, you are fairly certain Villeneuve's are as well. As the evening wears on and the ale continues flowing, Villeneuve becomes more effusive with broader gestures and excited speech. His hand brushes against yours, perhaps lingering for just a moment. Did you think he meant anything by it? I'm gonna say I don't know, but I know how to find out. How do you respond? Or do we kiss him? That could be dangerous, especially in public. Invite him to the rooms. Ignore. Invite him? My rooms are not far from here, you say. Would you care to accompany me there? I was beginning to fear you were not interested, Villeneuve says with a smile. I have drunk more than enough ale for the evening, but the night is still young. The two of you quickly travel back to your rooms. You enjoy a night of intense passion together. Yes. Do you pursue a longer relationship with Villeneuve, or do you just limit it to one night? We meet when we can, but our duties draw us apart, or we're in love. He's a fine man. There are plenty of fish in the sea. It was a night of fun, nothing more. I think we can be in love. I think that should be allowed. You meet repeatedly as often as you can arrange without scandal. Your nights together are passionate and your days stimulating. Some of your fellow officers may notice how often the two of you are together and may even suspect the truth. You are almost certain that Bryce guesses when you repeatedly have no time for the social events to which he invites you. But they have enough discretion to say nothing and to pretend that your friendship with Villeneuve is platonic. After several months, however, Villeneuve receives a letter from Gaul. He's been given a new posting and must return to Gaul. Urge him to stay. Do we tell him to resign, or do we offer to resign, or he must do his duty and I must do mine? This is difficult. Difficult. I think we should ask him to stay. You know I cannot, mon chéri, he replies. Do not ask me to betray my duty to my homeland for you. I would never ask you to betray yours. You think Villeneuve feels compelled to leave you by duty, but you cannot help wondering if perhaps he feels less strongly about you than you do about him. Despite your best efforts, he sails across the channel, leaving you behind. He promises to write when he can, but you know the letters will bring much sorrow as joy. Damn. Peace with Gaul does not last. Before long, hostilities have resumed, and our Admiralty is building back up its Royal Navy to combat the Gaulish threat to the freedom of the seas. The letter arrives by a special messenger very early on a cold morning. You slip back the seal. Your orders are written in fine black script on heavy cream-colored paper. It reads, You are requested and required to assume command of HM Sloop Defender. Your own command at last. At the crack of dawn, you walk to the end of the long pier where you first catch sight of HM Sloop Defender. It's not all that you might hope for. Those are barnacles on the hull. The sails are tattered at the edges, the paint is worn. It's no better as you find yourself standing on the deck, on the dirty, uneven deck, introducing yourself to your first and only lieutenant. Welcome aboard Defender, sir, says Mr. Benton proudly. The finest sloop in the Navy. His uniform looks as if he put it on in the dark. He wouldn't know the finest sloop in the Navy if it raked him with a broadside. You promptly draw out orders from the Admiralty, placing you in command of HM Sloop Defender. When you finish reading your orders aloud to the crew, you are officially the new master and commander of the sloop. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot a familiar sailor. Master's Mate Jones. Make that just Jones, since he was disrated in connection with that unpleasant business with Mr. Pigott back on HMS Courageous. He greets you with a respectful salute, but he's obviously disappointed to find himself in your command again, as if he didn't have enough to worry about. "Captain Smith, sir," says a middle-aged man coming up from below deck. "Carter, reporting for duty. I'm the senior master's mate and acting master of the Defender." Post captain would have a sailing master under him as most senior warrant officer, but on a sloop, the commander is technically also the master. You'll still have a few master's mates, experienced ratings, working to get their warrants as masters in the Royal Navy. Mr. Carter, as a senior mate, will fill the role of sloop sailing master in all but title. "Mr. Carter," you reply. "Make the sloop ready for some shakedown maneuvers. I want to see her capabilities." "Aye, aye, sir." You inspect Carter carefully as he readies the sloop for basic action. You quickly realize that this man is the only force holding the sloop together. Benton gives orders, but Carter has them followed. Under Carter's guidance, you manage to get the sloop out onto open waters. The shakedown maneuvers are embarrassing. You sail the sloop around, clear for battle, fire off a broadside. The sails are not hauled taut. It takes longer to raise and lower the sails than it should. It takes much longer, a full minute or more, to clear the sloop for action than it ought. The broadside is ragged and slow. One of the sailors injures himself by getting his foot crushed by a gun carriage. At this point, you believe that overall the crew is fairly unhappy and poorly disciplined. You're going to have to turn this sloop into a credible fighting vessel. To do that, you have to put the men to work. It looks like this crew isn't particularly used to hard work yet. Where do you want to focus their efforts? I think we should clean the ship. That's what I would have done before even testing it. I would have cleaned it. I would have scraped the barnacles off it. I mean, come on. Royal Navy vessels are normally fairly clean, but you take it to another level. The men holystone the deck to a smooth white sheen. They spend hours on their knees scrubbing the deck with the soft sandstone, then pumping water across it and scrubbing the deck again. The work is back-breaking and their hands are scraped almost raw by the effort. But now the sloop's deck is so clean you could eat off it. They come off the deck cleaning duty, they go to polishing the brasswork of the sloop. Every last brass fitting is polished, shined, and polished some more. The guns are oiled and clean, the ropes neatly coiled, and every last sail is mended. You heel the sloop over onto its side and send men overboard on lines to scrape the hull clean, and then repeat the process on the other side, and every last bit of paint on the hull is touched up by the time you're done. The process takes days, but by the end of it, the sloop looks like a different vessel. Gone is the ugly sloop, worse than some merchant ships that you took command of. You are now in command of a sloop that would compare well to any in the Royal Navy. What's more, the men seem to notice the change too and walk with a certain pride. The discipline of the sloop increases, as does its happiness. However, it's clear they haven't had to work this hard in quite some time. You manage to overhear a few surly grumbles from the crew, though you don't manage to catch any particular sailor grumbling. I say take it easy for a bit. In compensation for how hard you've been working the men, you give them a rope yarn Sunday, a day when their duties are cut back to the bare minimum necessary to keep the sloop sailing. Even though rope yarn Sunday doesn't fall on an actual Sunday, you let them relax as if it did, in fact more than on most Sundays. Some of the men skylark on deck, while others take to gambling and similar recreations. The mood of the crew improves dramatically as the men have some time to themselves and a little bit of an opportunity to relax. Fortunately, a relaxed mood is not necessarily what we want in the Royal Navy. You begin to notice that some of the men are slow to touch their brows when they address an officer and even forget to say "sir" when they ought. The omissions are small, but Royal Navy requires shows of respect for a reason. As the rope yard Sunday ends, the men grumble about returning to their duties, muttering amongst themselves, taking their time and obeying their orders. The sloop's happiness increases, but its discipline decreases. You believe that overall the crew is fairly unhappy, yet reasonably disciplined. "It's a difficult crew, sir," volunteers Mr. Carter. "Many of these landsmen come from jails. I've done what I can with them, but the previous captain and his lieutenant struggled to keep them in line." I feel like not punishing at all means they'll get too comfortable, and punishing them all extremely harsh might make them all upset. So do we use a few as an example, or do we punish them lightly? Probably use them as an example. Thanks to your expert leadership, you're able to successfully judge the character of these sailors. You managed to separate the sheep from the goats for the most part. The worst of the sailors receive double work duty, numerous lashes, and perhaps worst of all, they're cut off from rum completely. They soon begin to learn what sort of behavior will get them canned. Some of them even start to avoid such behavior. Discipline increases greatly. One evening you head below deck as some of the men are taking dinner. You find Jones telling a bawdy joke about the lascivious habits of women in London. He tells it quite well. You hadn't noticed before, but Jones has a certain natural charisma about him that makes others turn to listen to him. Chastise Jones for behavior unbecoming a sailor, have Jones whipped, keep an eye on him, but do nothing, tell a bawdy to my own. Keep an eye on him, and do nothing for now. At this point, you believe that overall the crew is fairly unhappy, yet reasonably disciplined. A few days later, Mr. Carter brings you a landsman sailor whom he found asleep on watch. "Terribly sorry, sir," he mumbles groggily. Whip him soundly, arrange a questionable jury to have him court-martialed and hanged, put him on double watch and forbid him from rum, let him slide. don't want to hang him, but I don't want to let him slide. Do we whip him or give him a double watch, even though he just fell asleep on the watch? I'm going to say put him on double watch. Discipline increases slightly. Cutting him off from rum should have helped, but you were soon enough informed by a young volunteer that he has fallen asleep a second time. Whip him. As captain asleep, you have His Majesty's authority to have any of your sailors flogged. How many lashes? We'll say 20. He screams out in pain, but he's back at work later that week. Most of the crew seem to agree that he deserves it. All of them now understand the penalty for insubordination on your sloop. Discipline increases substantially, but happiness decreases. As you head below deck, you see a handful of sailors and midshipmen whispering together, including Jones. As soon as they catch sight of you, they stop abruptly and go their separate ways. You experience a brief moment of deja vu, as the Gauls call it. Loudly ask what they were whispering about, pull one of them aside and ask what they were whispering about, whip them soundly, use a spy to find out what they were discussing, do nothing. Use a spy. You pass their names to Mr. Carter. Watch them, Mr. Carter. Aye, sir. I will, sir. At this point, you believe that overall the crew is fairly unhappy yet reasonably disciplined. There are definitely some bad apples in the crew. The next day, Mr. Benton reports that Mr. Carter has died in a fatal accident. Fallen down the hatchway, sir. He must have overbalanced. Do you really think it was an accident? I'm going to say no. Mr. Carter was an experienced and expert sailor. The only explanation for his death is murder, and since you doubt Benton killed him, and you know that you didn't, that's tantamount to mutiny. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Investigate. Seize the most likely suspects. Think about it some more. Ignore it. I'm going to say investigate. You ask some probing questions, examine the evidence, build a list of where each sailor on the sloop was at the time of the murder. It takes you a little while, but you finally identify Allen and Green, the two disaffected ordinary sailors, as the most likely suspects. You can't be sure that they're guilty. You think it is perhaps 90% likely. What do you do? I'm going to say imprison them. This makes nobody really happy. It means you don't publicly present your evidence and their friends can still imagine freeing them. But at the same time, it sends less of a definitive message. On the upside, it's probably the fairest thing you can do, and you sleep soundly knowing that you haven't perverted justice for purposes of maintaining good discipline. Discipline increases, but happiness decreases. You're now in the difficult position of selecting a new acting master. Mr. Carter's two mates both leave something to be desired. There's MacDougall, the senior mate. He's intelligent, but usually diverts his intelligence toward finding clever ways to avoid work. You doubt he'll set a good example for the crew. Then there's Avery, a junior mate. He's staunchly loyal to you and to the ship, but that's all you can say about him. He's simple-minded and, to put it kindly, a moron, to put it plainly. And of course there's Jones, this commander of HM Sloop Defender. You have the authority to restore him to his old grade as master's mate. You could then promote him to acting master. Jones will certainly appreciate it, and it might help to have another strong friend on the crew. Well, I don't want to pick MacDougall. Would restoring Jones actually get him on my side, though? Or would it just give him more power? I say Jones. Thank you, sir. It was really the least I can do, Mr. Jones. You're really emphasizing, mister. You won't live to regret it. The new master, Mr. Jones, comments to you 3 days later. I must admit, sir, that I did not think anyone could turn the crew of the sloop around, and yes, you've done it. The men are well-disciplined, Royal Navy crew, and happy to boot. I feared that a mutiny might be inevitable, but you've proved me wrong. You smile. It was hard work, and a little delicate at times, but I think we've done it. The HM Sloop Defender continues her cruise. On a bright and clear day, you come into sight of the Gaulish merchant convoy, with no apparent warships to defend it. There are a dozen Gaulish merchant ships in all. How do you plan your attack? Picking them off one by one as we overrun them with the advantage of the wind. Head to the middle. They have no choice but to come to us. The Defender is faster and more maneuverable. I feel like going in the middle is a bad idea. So do we want to push them toward us, or do we want to chase them? I'm going to say we'll pick them off one by one. You snap off orders, closing with the Gaulish convoy and running up the ensign of the Royal Navy. The Gaulish ships begin to scatter, hoping that you will have to chase one or two and allow the rest to escape. The crew responds to your orders with a discipline and precision that you have carefully drilled in. You expertly maneuver the sloop to continuously herd the merchant ships back together, and your crew fires carefully timed and well-aimed shots to the Gaulish sails to cripple your prey. Inevitably, some of the merchant ships escape, but you capture 8 of the enemy. You have deprived Gaul of much-needed supplies and earned yourself a small fortune in prize money. In recognition of your able service turning HM Sloop Defender into a worthy part of the Royal Navy, the Admiralty promotes you to post captain and assigns you to command HMS Dauntless, a 38-gun frigate. Admiralty asks if you have a preference for your first lieutenant. Mr. Stewart from the Courageous, Mr. Mason from the Courageous, Mr. Benton from Sloop Defender. I'm going to ask for Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart is available, and their Admiralty orders him to report to HMS Dauntless. He is young for the post, but enthusiastic and shaping up to be a fine officer. Your frigate, HMS Dauntless, sails on the Kingsport Harbor. Kingsport is the principal harbor city in one of Albion's major colonial possessions in the tropics. The fleet based out of Kingsport consists mostly of frigates like your own, perfect for raiding Gaulish shipping and for defending. Albion's own merchant marine from the depredations of the Gaulish Navy and privateers. Assignment to this fleet is quite a plum, with great opportunities for prize money and pleasant ports of call on the tropical islands. Shortly after your ship makes port, while you are overseeing the process of taking on new supplies, the signal midshipman runs up to you. He touches his hat and salutes and says, "Signal from the flag. Admirals compliments, captains of Dauntless, Vigilant, and Intrepid, please come to the flagship at your convenience." Acknowledge the signal and inform the officer of the watch to have my boat prepared for immediate departure, you reply. When an admiral asks you to report to a flagship, it is convenient for you to drop whatever you are doing and head over immediately. Within a minute, your boat is lowered over the frigate's side. Upon your arrival, smartly dressed sailors and a marine honor guard pipe you aboard HMS Indomitable, the admiral's flagship. The flag lieutenant touches his hat to each of the arriving captains. "Sir, if you will please accompany me. The admiral is waiting in his stateroom." The 3 of you are shown into Admiral's stateroom, a surprisingly large cabin for a warship, with a large, heavy table set in the middle. The admiral is in late middle age, his youthful vigor long since having given way to a prosperous roundness. His flag captain murmurs each of your names as you enter. The admiral pours a glass of port for each of you and clears his throat. As you know, one of our principal responsibilities on the station is protecting Albion's merchant shipping. The foodstuffs and raw materials from these colonies are vital to Albion's security. Recently, however, a Gaulish commerce raider has taken a large number of our merchant ships as prizes. The Gaulish frigate has recently made port on Blue Island. Blue Island is a possession of Jutland, and thus still neutral, so we can't take the frigate there. But we do have our spies keeping our eyes out. And so we got a report of the frigate. She's a 44-gun frigate called Lynx under the command of a Captain Villeneuve. You startle slightly at the name of Lynx captain. An admiral raises an eyebrow. "You know of Villeneuve, Captain Smiths?" "Our paths have crossed a few times, sir," you reply guardedly. "All the better. I'm assigning each of you to the mission to hunt down Lynx. You are to make all efforts to capture or destroy her. I know you would rather be hunting rich Gaulish merchant ships. I would rather you be hunting merchant ships as well." The admiral smiles. After all, he receives fully 1/4 of the prize, 1/4 of the value of any prizes a ship's capture. But we have our duty to think of. Because of the rules of neutrality, none of you can take stations within sight of Blue Island. I want Vigilant to patrol the east, Intrepid to sail the west, and Dauntless to patrol the north. One of you should be able to force Lynx to action as she sails out. I am also aware of the fact that a 44-gun frigate is significantly more powerful than any of your ships. However, I have no heavier frigates to send, and a ship of line would be unable to force Lynx to fight. I trust that the superior sailing and gunnery of the Royal Navy will be more than sufficient for you to prevail. And as their lordships say in the orders giving you command of a ship, fail in these duties at your peril, because unless there are any questions, best be about it then. You quickly return to your ship. As soon as you have the most essential supplies on board, you make sail to fight Captain Villeneuve. How can you fight him after all you've been through? To do like any other, I dread fighting him, but it's still my duty, or there must be some way to avoid him. Sad yet true. You sail HMS Dauntless into position north of the main port of Blue Island, but out of sight of the port. Staying on a specific station requires a certain amount of tacking and sailing back and forth, but that provides you with an opportunity to drill your crew into a high state of readiness. On the 3rd day after you arrive in position, a sailor in the crow's nest calls down. 2 sails, 1 to port, 1 to starboard. You pull out your spyglass and look at each ship. The ship to port looks like a fully loaded, large Gaulish merchant ship. It would be easy prey for a 38-gun frigate like Dauntless, and would fetch you a substantial payment in prize money. But the ship to starboard is a warship. You can't be certain at this range, but that ship is probably Lynx, the Gaulish 44 that you have been sent to defeat. What do you do? No glory in taking merchant ships as prizes. Duty demands that I fight the warship despite the dangers. I could take the merchant ship, but the consequences if their admiral realized that I shirked the opportunity to fight a Lynx would be too great. I can't really be sure that the frigate is a Lynx. Better take the prize and not worry about it. This is my chance to avoid fighting Villeneuve. I'll pursue the other ship instead. What should we do? What should we do? I think, I'll probably get in trouble if we don't, try to get the Lynx, so we'll do that one. Set course for the ship to starboard, sir, Mr. Stewart, and beat to quarters, you say calmly. Aye, aye, sir, he responds. Drums echo throughout the ship as the crew clears the ship for action. Neither ship has the wind gauge as you approach, but the wind is blowing strong and steady, giving you a fair degree of speed and maneuverability. Lynx is the stronger ship in terms of armament and construction, but the men of the Royal Navy are generally better trained and more reliable than those of the Gaulish Navy. How do you plan to win this battle? Charge straight at Lynx. The sooner you can make a boarding action, the better. Stay at range and fight a gunnery duel, relying on the ship's superior gunnery, or lead them into a trap to gain an advantage. I'm going to say stay at range. I think it's better just to take out the ship with the guns. Captain Villeneuve is happy to take his chances in a protracted broadside duel as well, so you take up positions at medium cannon range and begin exchanging broadside after broadside. Dauntless and Lynx engage broadside after broadside, but the results are inconclusive. Lynx throws much more lead with each broadside, but the Gaulish gunners are no match for the Royal Navy's rigorous training. Several of their cannonballs rip across your deck, smashing men and material alike to pieces. Thus far, you've been as good as you've gotten. The battle could go either way. Villeneuve is trying to close with Dauntless to force a boarding action. It will be hard to maintain the battle as a gunnery action. You'll have to either carry the enemy by boarding or try to damage their rigging enough to sail away. Which will it be? We've done enough we've battled honorably enough, or the battle's too dangerous so we'll flee, or we think we can win, or it's only possible to end the battle in Lynx's surrender or destruction. I feel like it's a bad idea to break it off, but also I don't think we can win. But I don't want to flee. I want to say break it off honorably. Captain Villeneuve pursues you doggedly. Lynx handled better than Dauntless, and for many tense moments you fear that he will force you to action despite your best efforts. Finally, however, Dauntless's gunnery accomplishes what her sailing could not. Your men shoot away one of Lynx's yardarms, dramatically reducing her speed. By the time Villeneuve has made his repairs, you have opened up enough distance that he cannot catch you. You set course back for Kingsport. Upon returning to Kingsport Harbor, flags immediately signal for you to report to HMS Indomitable. The Admiral listens grimly to your report. We did our best here, you conclude. Perhaps you did, perhaps you did, he replies. He nods as if he's been making up his mind. We will see what the court-martial concludes. I have decided to proffer charges against you for failure to do the utmost to destroy the enemy. The court-martial is in many ways the worst experience of your life. Mr. Stewart testifies in the court-martial. He seems to be trying to be both truthful and helpful to you, but his testimony is fairly damning. You have never had much support in the rest of the Royal Navy. The board of fellow captains that makes up the court-martial votes to convict you, and you return to the court to see your naked sword positioned point first towards you. The court-martial sentences you to be discharged from the Royal Navy in disgrace, never again to serve on one of His Majesty's ships. Old friends and colleagues shun you, but at least they spared you the ignominy of execution. With that, your adventure comes to an end for now, Mr. Smith. After all you sacrificed for the Royal Navy and to serve Albion, they still discarded you like some moldy sea biscuits. Most of your friends from the Royal Navy ostracized you, treating you as unworthy of even greeting. You were able to find some work To supplement your meager savings, it's undignified to stoop to trade, sailing as the master of a merchant ship, when once you were the captain of one of the king's warships. Still, it's better than poverty. Final stats. Mr. Edward Smith, rank of post captain, made post captain at 35 years old. I mean, we had good skills. It's just nobody respected us. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna be back and then find something else to do.